Have you ever stopped and wondered why any of this exists? The trees, the stars, your phone, even that messy drawer in your kitchen. Why is there something instead of nothing? There's an old story that tries to answer that. Not as a dry history lesson, but as a wild, sweeping narrative about how everything came to be and where it might be going. Here's the short version, raw, human, and maybe a little surprising. At the start, the story says there was God, not a man in a robe, but presence. Everywhere, everywhen. He didn't need anything. He had everything. And yet, for reasons we can only guess at, he created. Out of formlessness came light. Out of chaos came order. The world took shape. Sky, sea, land, plants, stars, animals. Pretty soon, life was humming. And then, humans. The story singles out two people, Adam and Eve. They're given a beautiful garden, food, companionship, literally paradise. But there are rules. One tree they can eat from, one they can't. The moment they pick the wrong one, it's messy. A snake, a choice, an act of defiance. Suddenly, life gets complicated. Shame, blame, pain, and the knowledge of mortality. The perfect world is gone. This is where the story gets interesting. It's not just about one mistake. It becomes a pattern. People make choices, those choices ripple, and the world bends toward brokenness. Cain kills Abel. Violence spreads. At one point, things get so bad, the story says the world floods. Only one family, Noah's, survives. After the waters recede, there's a promise. The world won't be wiped out again. A rainbow, a sign of mercy. Fast forward. People build and build, even a tower to the heavens, until language gets scattered and nations form. Time goes on, and one family stands out, Abraham's. He's promised a future, a people, and a purpose. But his life and his descendants' lives are messy. They're chosen, but they're human. They stumble, fight, and fail, again and again. Enter the big characters. Moses, who leads a people out of slavery after a series of plagues and a miraculous escape through the sea. David, the unlikely shepherd who beats a giant and becomes king. Solomon, who builds a magnificent temple but gets tangled in power and temptation. The story is cyclical. The people stray. Prophets call them back. Kings rise and fall. Sometimes there's revival. Often there's collapse. Then history takes a sharp turn. Empires crush kingdoms. People are exiled. The temple is destroyed. Hope seems small. But the prophets, the voices crying out, start naming a king who will restore everything. Not just a political ruler, but someone who heals, who suffers, who brings justice. They call him Messiah. And that's where a baby named Jesus shows up. Born in humble circumstances, growing up ordinary, then stepping into a life that shocked people. He didn't come with an army. He talked about a kingdom, one that flips expectations. The poor matter, the humble inherit. Enemies are invited in. He healed the sick, forgave sins, and called out the self-righteous. People loved him. People feared him. The religious leaders felt threatened. Politics was tense. Jesus kept saying his mission led to a cross, a brutal public execution, betrayal, arrest, trial. He was crucified. It looked like the story ended in defeat. Darkness, a sealed tomb. But then, 3 days later, the tomb was empty. People saw him alive. The story flipped again. Death was not final. He resurrected. He appeared, talked, ate with friends. It was raw and real. Why does that matter? Because in this story, Jesus doesn't just beat death. He offers a way to fix what was broken. Instead of wiping humanity out, he heals it from within. He pays a price so the world's crookedness can be straightened. Not by force, but by love, sacrifice, and a community of people who carry that message forward. After Jesus, his followers, ordinary people, started building something new, the church. Not a building at first, but a movement. They spread the message across cities and countries. Persecution followed, but so did growth. The story says this movement is how God rules now, not through armies or empires, but through people living differently, serving others, and refusing to live by fear. And here's the kicker. The story doesn't promise everything will be fixed right away. It says there will be struggle, injustice, heartbreak. But it also promises a final time when everything gets made right. A coming day when suffering ends, death is defeated, and the world is remade. The tree of life returns. There's no more pain. Imagine a world where the bad stuff is finally reversed. So why tell this story today? Because it answers the big question in a way that's both ancient and shockingly relevant. Why is there brokenness, and what are we supposed to do about it? The story offers a path. Not easy, not smooth, but a path where people choose mercy over revenge, restoration over domination, and community over isolation. You don't have to agree with every detail. You might reject parts, love parts, or be skeptical. But there's power in the story's core, that despite humanity's worst, there's a plan to heal. And it centers on love that sacrifices itself for others. So that's the story, from creation to heartbreak to a promise of renewal, messy, hopeful, tragic, and strangely optimistic. It asks a question you cannot ignore. Do you want to be part of the fix? If so, the story says the door is open.